Another section of the front that requires, in my opinion, detailed attention. I would call it the Lyman and Sloviansk section of the front, or roughly speaking, everything that is located to the northeast and east of that. The Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, which you already mentioned today. With the forces of, by and large, well, 4 combined arms armies on the section from Rakivka. This is already on the western bank of the Jerebets and all the way southwest of the M03 highway, somewhere, well, at the point of intersection of this highway with the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas water pipeline. The Muscovites are currently attacking actually in the direction from the northeast, from the east towards the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration with the forces of the 20th Combined Arms Army and part of the forces of the 1st Tank Army. It is right here, well, north of Lyman, and on the section from Kharkivka to Drobyshev, and further all the way to Torska, with the forces mainly of the 25th Combined Arms Army directly around Lyman, and on the section along the T0513 highway, which leads from Siversk to Lyman, and with the main forces of their 3rd Combined Arms Army attacking from Ozern with Kryva Luka and all the way beyond the mentioned M03 highway. The Muscovites are actually trying, as I have already repeated, to attack in the direction of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. But by and large, the occupiers currently do not have any major successes, particularly north of Lyman. Even more than that, some sources claim that Ukrainian soldiers are managing to attack, particularly in the areas of Nove, Zelen Pol, Dyrilov, and to the southeast of Lyman, and in these areas at least, even pushing the enemy back generally to the east. At the same time, the price that the Muscovites are paying for daily frontal attacks in the direction of Lyman and reaches from 6 to 7 occupiers are left destroyed during each of these frontal attempts. And according to the Institute for the Study of War, there are about 24 such attempts taking place on this sector throughout August. Instead, the situation is completely different and is developing in a completely different way on the sector south of Lyman. Here are the main forces of the Rashist 3rd Combined Arms Army. In particular, its 7th, 6th, 123rd, 88th, 85th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigades. It is not excluded that at least separate detachments of the 10th Special Forces Brigade of the GRU, of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation are also involved here, attacking on the section from Ozern with Kryva Luka and all the way to the highway already mentioned by us today, the M03 highway, to the point where the highway intersects with the channel of the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas water pipeline. They are attacking along a dozen separate sections, but with a general aim to the west, in particular from Kryva Luka through Starodubivka and Piskunivka. The Muscovites are trying to break through to Mykolaievka. They are attacking that same Mykolaievka from there as well, with a frontal assault, and on the southern flank, bypassing Rai Oleksandrivka through Kaleniki, on the section from those same Kaleniki to Nikiforivka. It seems that the Muscovites have already managed to enter Rai Oleksandrivka in Lukyanivka and Dibrova. And likewise, the enemy's attacks and attempts to expand their territory of control along and on both sides of the M03 highway do not cease daily, particularly with an aim towards Malinivka and Tikhonivka. This is already further west of the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas water pipeline towards Yurkivka and Orekhuvatka. At the same time, the most pessimistic sources insist that despite the enemy's insane losses and the general decrease in the intensity of these very infantry attacks, and the ones playing the first fiddle here on this sector right now, again referring to the Institute for the Study of War, are precisely small enemy assault groups with active support from drones, artillery, and manned aviation, which drop up to 40, sometimes 40 KBs guided aerial bombs daily on this very sector. So, despite this, the Muscovites are generally continuing their daily methodical pressure in two main directions. This is the already mentioned sector, Kryva Luka, Mykolaiv. Moreover, the Muscovites are trying to attack along the northern edge of the dominant ridge of heights on the border with the Kraidova Flora Nature Reserve and south of Kaleniki through Rai, Oleksandrivka towards Orekuvatka. I'll venture to guess that the conditional boundary, the conditional line of Starodubivka, Mykolaivka, Orekuvatka, Nikanorivka, or the protected area, as they call it, will determine in the near future whether it will be possible to effectively and sustainably defend the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, at least from the east and northeast. We have the opportunity to hear a few details about the development of the situation around Lyman, and in general on the North Sloviansk sector of the front. The battalion commander of the 117th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade, Captain Mykola Voshanov, is on the line with the Spetscorps studio. He should have appeared by now. I see you, Mr. Mykola. Greetings.
Good day. Good day. I wish you health.
First of all, I would like to draw our viewers' attention to the phone number this time, which should already be on the screens. This is the contact for the recruitment center of the 117th, a unit that has traditions, considerable combat experience, where every soldier is valued and respected, and motivated and reliable fellow recruits are very much needed. So for anyone who needs additional information, please call. They will provide answers to all your questions. Mr. Mykola, open sources indicate that the Muscovites, or at least, let's say, small infantry groups of the enemy, have allegedly managed, through Piskunivka and Starodubivka from the north and a flanking maneuver from the south, to approach Mykolaivka. Yes, there is a persistent enemy presence in Mykolaivka, though it's difficult to confirm. All of this is happening on the southern bank of the Siversky Donets. To what extent does this threaten the defenders of Lyman? And does it mean that the Muscovites have managed to fully reach the ridge of dominant heights, the ones that stretch from Kryva Luka all the way to the M03 highway?
Well, look, the situational arrival of small Russian groups to Mykolaivka on the southern bank of the Siversky Donets does indeed create an additional tactical threat. Yeah. But they haven't managed to seize the key ridge, the ridge of dominant heights there yet. That is, those groups that approach, that get spotted somewhere in certain areas, they are immediately destroyed. They are not super critical there, because the path they need to cover, they are already so exhausted that it's actually very difficult to talk about any kind of combat operations there.
Tell me, under these circumstances in general, not just in this sector, perhaps from the north, perhaps, well, you communicate with fellow commanders from different units, right? Given the current circumstances, the threat of the enemy encircling Lyman, well, from the south in particular, and as a consequence, the threat of splitting our forces into two parts, likely, well, along that very ridge of heights held by Ukrainian forces defending the approaches to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. As of now, at this moment, does it exist, or is that not even being discussed at the moment?
Well, some groups were detected in the southern directions there of Lyman. Given the current nature of combat operations in the Lyman and Sloviansk directions, the threat of encirclement of Lyman, well, of course, it might have been possible. Well, at this particular moment, let's assume that the enemy is not managing to accumulate all their efforts in these directions. That is, groups are moving, they are even moving one by one, a single person at a time, trying to accumulate somewhere, but there are no such attempts at this moment. It is very difficult to carry out today in their efforts, because their logistical support, the logistics themselves, are being disrupted. Yeah, we are also working at a long distance towards the enemy so that we can control their movements. Therefore, it is too early to talk about this topic. Yes, there were some warning signs, but they were, well, I will put it this way, they were completely suppressed in this matter.
I suspect you have already partially answered well if we approach my next question logically based on your answer. Since the beginning of the summer, there have been at least half a dozen mechanized combined assaults on the, let's say, former Siversk sector of the front, where the Muscovites tried to push both armored vehicles and tanks forward. And this is despite the fact that, as I understand it, the surveillance zone is completely transparent. It hasn't gone anywhere. It exists. And as time goes on, it's obviously only expanding. In your opinion, what drives the enemy to these kinds of banzai attacks? And how often do such events take place in your unit's area of responsibility?
Well, to answer that question right away, if we're talking specifically about our brigade's defense sector, such assaults happened probably a very long time ago. Motorized equipment was used more, and even that was more than a month ago. Our landscape itself just doesn't allow for that. So, but there were such nuances. So what could prompt the enemy to take such actions? Well, first of all, it's the strict orders from their command. That's the first thing. And of course, the command, which hides the real losses and reports successes, yes, in some sectors, in some settlements, where they try to put up their flags. So, and these reports go faster than their actions there in combat. Accordingly, in order to significantly shorten these operational timelines, they recklessly throw equipment, some, well, their entire groups and so on, directly into these brutal meat assaults. That is, this is the very thing that can motivate them the most. That is, hasty reports that run faster than the combat operations they are conducting.
Mr. Mikola, tell me, to what percentage is the confrontation in general on the Lyman-Sloviansk direction, and along, in particular, the T-0513 Siversk-Lyman highway, a remote war now where drones, perhaps artillery and guided aerial bombs play the leading role? And what percentage of all this accounts for direct infantry contact confrontations, if, of course, such things take place at all?
Well, look, in the Sloviansk direction and in the area, for example, of the T-0513, combat operations are mainly conducted through remote warfare. That is 80 to 90%. That is, such a percentage accounts for it. And individual contact engagements with the enemy are about 10 to 20%. Well, no more than that. That is, they are decreasing. The enemy simply runs into some of our positions. Accordingly, there is contact, there are combat engagements. Accordingly, this percentage is not any higher.
I will be asked at the end, tell me, is your enemy still the regiments of the 67th Motorized Rifle Division, together with the 169th, 164th Motorized Rifle Brigades? Have any new, fundamentally new forces appeared that are not part of the 25th Combined Arms Army?
Recently, and actually over the entire period, it's probably the case that the units I named are often here permanently. Any other separate ones, well, none have been detected. Specifically, if we're talking about our sector or our neighbors to the right or left. The prisoners who have arrived and all intelligence data point mainly to these units.
29th.
The 69th, yes. You see, how are they covering their losses? At the expense of the Army's internal reserves, yes. And they are maximally transferring some battalions there, well, already combat-ready ones, specifically into this 25th Army. They are not using any
external reserves. Mr. Mikola, thank you very much for the detailed account. Please take care of yourself and your soldiers. Thank you. Is the resilience of the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration as a whole directly dependent, in your opinion, and how critically, on the success of the defense of Lyman?
Well, look, the defense of Lyman also depends very heavily on the success of the defense of Sloviansk. Well, because if Sloviansk falls, which, well, it will be very, very difficult to defend Lyman.
Especially considering these attempts.
Well, absolutely, because the Russians will immediately take control of the highway and everything north of it. And accordingly, the enemy is quite adequately pushing through to the Sloviansk TPP and to Orikovatka, where, as far as I remember, the sluices are located.
Yes.
And all of this for them is...
The 10th station?
Yes, yes. The first task for them is a breakthrough into Mykolaiivka and forcing a battle for the Sloviansk TPP, and gradually through it there, a breakthrough directly to Sloviansk. Will they succeed? Well, right now the Russians have bet on this because even from the whining of Z-bloggers, they note that it is precisely the 3rd Combined Arms Army that is receiving priority reinforcements. So they are doing well with personnel, meaning they can continue to expand their offensive, while their neighbors to the north, thank God, do not have such a good situation. At the same time, if the offensive of the 3rd Combined Arms Army is not supported from the north, well, again, they will also expose their northern flank to our strike. Therefore, well, of course, it is unlikely that we will force the river in order to restore something, but at the same time, to deploy certain crews of unmanned systems, artillery. That is, we will make their task sufficiently difficult, because even in the fight of unmanned systems, it is very important there. Your opponent can, conditionally speaking, take off in one square or can take off around you. Therefore, the 3rd Combined Arms Army, it is being replenished, it is breaking through. We see that it is reinforced by the South Division. At the same time, without a successful offensive on Lyman, well, it will be quite difficult for them to enter Sloviansk. They will soon impose a fight for the thermal power plant, but entering Sloviansk directly will be very, very difficult at this pace.
Given the various methods, scenarios, and characteristics of conducting infantry, or let's say land combat, that currently exist, we must carefully consider how these factors interact. The dominant heights, in particular this ridge that stretches, well, practically from the Siversky Donets in front of the gas water pipeline channel all the way past the outskirts of Chasiv Yar it goes. To what extent is a dominant height right now? Well, does it have some kind of decisive, is it generally a decisive factor in conducting such offensive operations?
Of course, when you are the one who controls the height, it becomes much more convenient for you to manage.
In that sense, nothing has changed.
But on the other hand, you are also a good target for artillery. So on a height, well, it's unlikely.
Considering the drone component?
Considering the drone component, of course, it's better for you to have the dominant heights. Any radio technician will tell you that. But it is not. Well, it is really not quite as critical or urgent right now as it was, let us say, about 3 or 4 years ago. It just does not carry the same weight that it used to back then. When you really had to, I remember that wonderful Roboton operation where there was a 30-meter elevation change over 1 kilometer. Go ahead, move, storm uphill, and the enemy sees you everywhere without air or drone support.
Are you talking about Kresty?
Well, the situation was the same everywhere there. It was the same everywhere. I mean, you just take it like that and climb up there, whether it was at Kresty, Robotyne, or Verbov. It was just the same landscape. At the same time, the landscape has stopped playing such a key role now.
To sum up, tell me, in your opinion, from a commander's point of view, what tools, electronic warfare assets, an avalanche of artillery, countless drones, or perhaps some other components could help us now, if reinforced, to contain this advance of the Muscovites on the former Siversk sector of the front?
Everything and as much as possible, because a combination of assets is needed.
Let me ask it this way. Assets, both technical and ammunition, or people? That way, perhaps, yes, it would be more correct.
People and supplies, because we need trained people so they can hold the line. And a sufficient amount of artillery and unmanned systems forces are needed to cover them.
Today in the Spetskorps studio, we were joined by veteran, volunteer, and former commander of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade, Mykola Melnik. Thank you, Mykola, for your insightful account.
Thank you.
We'll end it here with the certainty of continuing. Take care of yourselves. We must stand firm without a doubt.